It feels like nowadays the internet is obsessed with the past. Remember Club Penguin? Remember Elvis? Remember Christmas? It doesn't exist anymore. People seem to collectively fixate on the good old days of literally everything, including stuff they never even experienced firsthand. This phenomenon known as nostalgia absolutely plagues the internet. Wait, you think new thing is better than old thing? Why are you ugly? But by far, the one thing the internet is most aggressively nostalgic for is video games. It's almost as if it's an agreed fact online that games used to be better, and all modern games are corporate slop. This beloved classic is getting a remake. Can't wait for the devs to ruin it with microtransactions. There's a new update in this game that adds a ton of awesome features. Does anyone else miss when this game was simple? The good old days. This new game contains a female lead character. This sort of discourse never actually goes anywhere. People who think video games used to be better are gonna think that way forever. But do they have a point? Most of my favourite games of all time are old as hell, and I can't really remember the last time I was truly floored by a new game. So, I wanted to ask the question, have video games in some way or another legitimately gotten worse? And I think I found my answer. But I'm only gonna tell you if you subscribe. In 2001, video games were created by Alan Pong with the release of Luigi's Mansion. And gradually, what people expected from video games changed over time, from multiplayer to online play to unlockable items, which finally all crescendoed into the juggernaut genre that is live service games. Fortnite, Overwatch, Call of Duty, these are just a few examples of the games that made the live service model the standard for modern releases. Even games that wouldn't traditionally be considered live service now have live service elements such as Minecraft. And a lot of people dislike this type of experience as there's much more of a focus on keeping you engaged rather than just providing you with fun gameplay. And think that live service games are always going to be objectively inferior. I can still remember the first time I played through Super Mario Galaxy. Do you think I can remember my first Fortnite win? Oh wait, yes I can, this argument is stupid. Listen, I can completely understand preferring games that are one-time experiences. Games that are so fun and expertly crafted that you can play it over and over again. And you have access to every single bit of content immediately and forever. But does that mean that every one and done game is better than every live service game? No. Simply the concept of a game that changes and evolves over time is cool. It's enough to draw people in and keep people playing, and I don't know why people act as if that's a bad thing. You're getting multiple years of content in one title, which means you don't have to buy a new game when you finish the first. Unless you Call of Duty for some reason, I don't know how they get away with that. Sure, there are some titles that abuse this model to take advantage of their players, which I will be covering later, but this system as a whole is wildly overhated by people that are too upset that League of Legends has more active players than Boom Blocks. Trust me, I'm pissed too. I'm not saying every game should be like this. There absolutely is a place for traditional games that focus on creating singular experiences. I'm just saying I don't think there's anything inherently wrong with the live service model. Genshin Impact doesn't suck because it's live service. It sucks because it's Genshin Impact. Speaking of sucking, let's move on to possibly the most hated mechanic in modern gaming: monetization. Wait, you're telling me people spend real money on fake video game stuff? That's pathetic. Holy shit, is that Cleveland? My name is Cleveland Brown and I'm proud to be. Back in the golden ages of gaming, you'd pay one small fee of $40 to $60 and you'd get a complete product. No add-ons, no microtransactions, no nothing. Whereas now, video games are free sometimes. Obviously, there are many instances of companies these days being greedy. Selling a game for $70 and then cramming it full of in-game purchases, or publishing an incomplete game only to add paid DLC down the line is undeniably bad, and I'm in no way supporting the companies that do that. But would I say in-game monetization has no upsides? Not necessarily. The main benefit to us consumers that in-game purchases bring is a lower entry cost. Nowadays, games can be really cheap or even free due to the inclusion of in-game purchases, which I think is a thing a lot of people take for granted. 15 years ago, the idea of a free video game was crazy, especially for AAA titles. Whereas now, it almost feels weird when a game isn't free, even more so if it's live service. Do you really consider them having some in-game purchases detrimental enough to outweigh that positive? That sentence made me sound intelligent. Now, there are, of course, some examples of microtransactions that I don't think are great, such as pay-to-win mechanics. However, I think nowadays you barely even see that. It's mostly just skins, emotes, and battle passes. And speaking of battle passes, I want to set the record straight. Battle passes are sick. Yes, at the moment, every single game that is released has some sort of battle pass system, I know. But the concept of being able to continuously unlock cool cosmetics and stuff at a price that is almost always way cheaper than all the other microtransactions in the game is cool as hell, and I'm tired of pretending it's not. That being said, if you don't like monetization in video games and prefer to pay one set fee for a full experience, that's absolutely fine. I'm not here to tell you you're wrong for thinking that, and I'm more than aware of all the negatives that monetization brings. I'm just saying I don't think it's overall made video games objectively worse. But don't include them if your game's already $70, like what are you doing, Ubisoft? Now, despite me being critical of these arguments for video games being worse nowadays, that doesn't mean I think modern releases are perfect. In fact, one way that I believe that games have objectively gotten worse is down to a massive lack of simplicity. And by that I mean, games these days are just trying to do way too much. Every single modern release has to have weekly challenges, 500 different modes, skill trees, free roam, gambling. Whatever happened to just making a good game and just letting it be that, rather than just sticking to one set concept or form of gameplay? Everyone seems to be filling their releases with far too many features to the point where it becomes overwhelming. Most of my favourite games of all time stay really simple, and that's what leads them to stick with me so much. Luigi's Mansion, my favourite game of all time, takes place in one building. You suck up ghosts, you make a mess, that's pretty much it. If this game had a skill tree, I'd kill Luigi with my bare hands. Now, I'm not saying they're not allowed to be complex, because that's what adds so much replayability to a lot of these games, but there's a huge difference between features that add to the gameplay and features that just exist for the sake of existing. I like Fortnite a lot. I've been playing it on and off for nearly 8 years now, oh my god. But does it have to have all this slot tack to it when the majority of players only care about the main modes? Yeah, I'm sure it's more profitable and they have a vision for this game becoming a platform, but does it make the game better? I don't know. However, all of these arguments and pretty much everything I've said in this video needs to be taken with a big ol' pinch of salt, because the one thing that affects the way every single person thinks about video games is simply nostalgia bias. Whether you like it or not, we are all affected by nostalgia. I don't care if you say you're the least biased person in the world. Us humans are always going to remember our favourite memories as way better than they actually were, and that is especially prevalent with video games. Throughout this video, I've been arguing that as a whole, I don't think games have objectively gotten worse over the years. But am I going to act like my favourite games aren't the ones I played when I was a kid? No. Nostalgia is a very real thing. You're almost always going to look back on the past more fondly than the present, and that's okay. But what you've got to remember is that means you don't necessarily prefer older games because they're actually better. Yes, there absolutely are a lot of things wrong with modern releases, I won't deny that. Stuff like aggressive monetization is actively anti-consumer, which is something that was a lot less prevalent 20 years ago. But a lot of discourse over this topic seems to ignore that nostalgia exists. It's okay if you prefer playing Mario 64 than playing Mario Odyssey, but does that mean 3D Mario peaked in 1996? No! You just have more nostalgia for the first than the latter. So when I see adults going online and shitting on new releases all because they prefer the games they played when they were a kid, it's really embarrassing. All that does is show me you're not emotionally intelligent enough to know that you're biased. And also, saying video games as a whole have gotten worse is such an insane thing to say because there are so many games out there. You don't purely have to play the same AAA games over and over again. There are tons of absolute masterpieces being made right now that you're completely unaware of because you refuse to play anything that doesn't have guns or a ball in it. So in conclusion, are video games actually getting worse? Not really. There are a lot of AAA games out there that suck, but saying that they've all gotten worse is an insult to the amount of games, especially indie ones, that are just as good, if not better, than WarioWare Smooth Moves. Thank you for watching, like the video or I'll be upset, and remember, fiddle-dee-dum, fiddle-dee-dee. I cannot digest cheese.